I never expected my own mother to turn on me, especially after everything I had done for her. But life has a twisted sense of humor. For years, I worked my ass off, grinding through long hours, sacrificing my personal life, and pushing through every obstacle to build a stable future. When I finally made it, the first thing I did was buy my mom a house, her dream home. I covered every expense, from the mortgage to the utilities, and even threw in some extra for her comfort. She never had to worry about money again. My generosity didn't stop there. My siblings, Mark and Lisa, weren't exactly struggling, but they weren't thriving either. So, I helped them out. Paid off Mark's debts. Funded Lisa's business. Whenever someone in the family needed anything, I was the one they called. At first, it felt good. I thought I was doing the right thing. But over time, I noticed something unsettling. The gratitude faded, replaced by expectation. No one said thank you anymore. No one asked if I was okay. My success became their safety net, and my money became theirs to spend. Then came the family gathering that changed everything. We were all sitting in my mom's massive dining room, the one I paid for, celebrating my nephew's birthday. The conversation drifted to some minor drama about Lisa's boutique. Apparently, she had made a bad investment, and instead of taking responsibility, she subtly hinted that I should cover the losses. I didn't say anything. I just sipped my drink, watching the way everyone nodded like it was a given. Like it was my duty. Then, my mom, my own mother, sighed and said, "You bring us nothing but trouble." I froze. At first, I thought I misheard. But no, she said it loud and clear. I looked around. No one seemed shocked. No one defended me. They just carried on, like I was the problem in my own life. Something snapped inside me. I stood up, my voice cold and steady. "If that's how you feel, then I won't burden you anymore." Silence. I placed my glass down, letting my words settle in. No more money. No more houses. No more covering your mistakes. If I bring nothing but trouble, then consider me gone. Panic spread through the room. Lisa's face turned pale. Mark stammered something about how I was overreacting. My mom's eyes widened, finally realizing what she had done. But I didn't wait for excuses. I left. And for the first time in years, I felt free. A few days passed after that disastrous family gathering, and my phone was blowing up. At first, it was just Mark and Lisa, sending guilt-tripping texts about how family is supposed to stick together. Then came the voicemails, my mother, her voice shaking, saying she didn't mean what she said. That she was just frustrated. That I was taking things too far. I ignored them all. For the first time in years, I was finally putting myself first. It felt foreign, like I was doing something wrong. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had been their ATM, not their family. Then, one evening, my mom showed up at my doorstep. She looked different. Less confident. Maybe even a little afraid. I let her in, but I didn't offer her a drink. Didn't tell her to sit down. She wasn't here for comfort. "I never meant to hurt you," she said quietly. I folded my arms. "Then why did you?" She looked down. "I don't know. That wasn't good enough." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "I did everything I could for you. I gave you a house. I paid your bills. I made sure you never had to struggle again. And somehow, that made me the bad guy." Tears welled in her eyes. "I was wrong." I let out a humorless laugh. "That's the first time you've admitted that." She wiped at her face, sniffling. I got used to it. You taking care of everything. And when you didn't jump in to fix things for Lisa, I panicked. I took it out on you." Her words hung in the air, raw and unfiltered. For the first time, I saw her not as my mother, but as a person. A flawed, scared person who had leaned too much on me because it was easier than facing reality. I exhaled slowly. I love you, Mom. But I'm done being your crutch. Her lips trembled, but she nodded. I understand. And for the first time, I think she actually did. A week passed, and something strange happened. Silence. No guilt-tripping texts. No calls begging me to reconsider. No dramatic family interventions. I half expected Lisa to show up at my door with another sob story or for Mark to send some passive-aggressive message about how I was abandoning the family. But nothing. It was almost eerie. Then, one evening, I got a call from my aunt, my mom's older sister, who had always been more of a spectator in family drama than a participant. I answered, expecting another lecture, but instead, she sighed and said, I just wanted to say I understand why you did it. That caught me off guard. She explained that after I cut off the financial support, reality hit my mom, Lisa, and Mark hard. Lisa had to scramble to find a way to cover her business losses. Mark had to figure out how to pay his own bills. And my mom? She had to finally budget her life instead of relying on me to clean up her messes. They're mad, my aunt admitted. But not at you. At themselves. Because for the first time, they're realizing what they've done. I sat there, gripping my phone. I should have felt satisfied. Vindicated. Maybe even a little smug. But all I felt was relief. Relief that I had broken free. That I wasn't carrying the weight of their choices anymore. That for once, I wasn't responsible for fixing what they broke. They'll never say it out loud, my aunt continued. But they needed this. I thanked her and hung up, staring out my window at the city lights. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't even realized I was missing: peace. A month passed, and life felt different. Lighter. Quieter. At first, I expected the guilt to creep in, for some deep-rooted obligation to pull me back into their mess. But instead, I felt something else: freedom. No more random financial requests. No more being treated like a walking wallet. No more resentment disguised as family love. Then, one evening, my phone rang. It was my mom. I hesitated before answering. Hello? She sighed, as if just hearing my voice was painful. Hi. Silence stretched between us. Not the cold, uncomfortable kind, but the kind that comes when both people are trying to figure out what to say. Finally, she spoke. I got a job. I blinked. What? A job, she repeated, a bit more firmly. Part-time at a local boutique. It's not much, but I'm paying my own bills now. I didn't know what to say. My mother, the woman who had depended on me for everything, was actually standing on her own. That's great, Mom. And I meant it. She exhaled, relieved. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I was so used to you fixing everything that I forgot you weren't supposed to. I forgot you were my son first, not my provider. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I swallowed. I just wanted to be your family, Mom. Not your safety net. I know, she whispered. And I want to fix that. For the first time, I believed her. We didn't fix everything in that one conversation. Years of entitlement and resentment don't disappear overnight. But it was a start. A real one. And as I hung up the phone that night, I realized something: I wasn't just free from their expectations. I was finally free to have a real relationship with them. Weeks turned into months, and for the first time in years, my life was my own. No constant financial demands, no emotional blackmail, no walking on eggshells to keep everyone happy. I focused on myself, my career, my own dreams, my own happiness. It felt strange at first, almost selfish, but then I realized something. I had spent so much time taking care of everyone else that I had forgotten to take care of myself. Then, one weekend, my mom invited me over for dinner. Not for a family discussion or an ambush, just dinner. I almost said no, but something in her voice made me curious. When I arrived, the house, the one I had bought for her, felt different. Not physically, but in its energy. There was no tension, no unspoken expectation in the air. Just my mother standing at the stove, actually cooking, something she hadn't done in years. She turned and smiled, a little awkward. I made lasagna. I know it's your favorite. It was a simple gesture, but it hit me hard. We sat and ate, talking about everything except money. She told me about her job, how weird it was to clock in and take orders from a younger manager. She even laughed about how she almost quit on her first day but stuck with it because, in her words, I had something to prove to myself. For the first time in forever, I saw her not as a dependent, not as someone weighing me down, but as a person. Then, as we finished eating, she cleared her throat. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'd like to be your mom again. Not someone you have to take care of. Just your mom. I studied her for a moment, searching for any sign of manipulation. But there was none. Just honesty. Just effort. I exhaled slowly and nodded. I'd like that too. She smiled, and for the first time in years, it felt real. We weren't perfect. We never would be. But we were finally rebuilding something that money couldn't buy: trust. A few more months passed, and life kept moving forward. I wasn't naive. I knew my relationship with my family would never be the same. But that wasn't a bad thing. In fact, it was the best thing that could have happened. Mark and Lisa were still distant. After the financial faucet turned off, they struggled. Lisa's boutique barely survived, but instead of running to me, she figured it out on her own. Mark got a second job and stopped partying as much. They weren't thrilled with me, but they were learning. And whether they admitted it or not, they were better for it. As for my mom, she changed in ways I never thought possible. She stopped calling me only when she needed something. Instead, she called just to talk, to check in. It was strange at first, almost unnatural. But over time, it became normal. One day, she surprised me. I was at my place when the doorbell rang. When I opened it, she was standing there with a small box in her hands. I know it's not much, she said nervously, but I wanted to give you something. I opened the box. Inside was a simple leather wallet. I figured since you've spent your whole life giving to everyone else, she said softly, you should have something to remind you to keep something for yourself. It wasn't about the wallet. It was about the meaning behind it. I swallowed the lump in my throat and gave her a nod. Thank you, Mom. She smiled, genuine, warm, and full of something I hadn't seen in a long time. Gratitude. We weren't perfect. We never would be. But we were finally something more important than that. We were family again. A year passed. I never thought I'd say this, but life had never felt more balanced. No longer was I carrying the weight of my family's problems, nor was I drowning in the resentment that had built up over the years. I had set boundaries, and, surprisingly, they were being respected. Mark and Lisa eventually came around, though not in the way I expected. Lisa's boutique didn't collapse, but it didn't thrive either. She learned the hard way that running a business wasn't just about having money, it was about making smart choices. When we finally sat down for coffee one day, she didn't ask for a loan. She asked for advice. I should have listened to you earlier, she admitted, stirring her drink. I thought I knew everything, but I didn't. I smirked. Took you long enough. She rolled her eyes, but she laughed. A real laugh. Mark was even more surprising. He used to be the reckless one, always blowing money on things he didn't need, always expecting me to bail him out. But now? He had picked up responsibility like it was second nature. One evening, he called me just to talk. Hey, he said. I just wanted to say. I get it now. I leaned back on my couch, raising an eyebrow. Get what? The pressure, he admitted. The way everyone relied on you. It was easier to take from you than to stand on our own. And when you took that away, I hated it. But you were right. For a second, I didn't know what to say. Mark never apologized. Never admitted he was wrong. But here he was, doing both. I appreciate that, I finally said. I really do. Things weren't perfect between us, but they didn't need to be. What mattered was that for the first time, my family saw me as a person, not a provider. As for my mom? She stuck with her job, even moved into a smaller home, one she paid for herself, and one day, she did something I never thought I'd see. She invited me over, and when I arrived, there was an envelope on the table. She slid it toward me with a nervous smile. What's this? I asked. She took a deep breath. My first savings. I know it's not much, but I want you to have it. I opened the envelope and saw a check. A small amount, but it wasn't about the money. It was about her taking responsibility. I don't need your money, Mom, I said gently. She nodded. I know. But this isn't about need. It's about me making things right. I exhaled, shaking my head with a smile. You already have. For the first time in years, I wasn't needed, I was wanted, and that was worth more than anything money could buy. More time passed, and life settled into something I never thought I'd have, peace, no more late-night phone calls asking for money. No more guilt-tripping. No more feeling like I had to earn my family's love by funding their lifestyles. I wasn't just free from them, I was free from the version of myself that had allowed it to happen. Then one day, something unexpected happened. I was sitting in my apartment, flipping through emails, when my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something told me to answer. Hello? There was a pause, then a familiar voice. Hey, it's Dad. I froze. I hadn't spoken to my father in years. He had left when I was young, disappearing without a trace, leaving my mom to raise us alone. We never knew where he went or why he never reached out. And now, just like that, he was on the other end of the line. What do you want? I asked, my voice colder than I intended. He sighed. I heard about what happened with the family. How you stepped back. I wanted to say I'm proud of you. I almost laughed. Proud, the man who abandoned us? Who left me to pick up the pieces? But instead of anger, I felt nothing. I don't need your approval, I said, bluntly. I know, he admitted. And that's why I called. Because you finally realized something it took me too long to learn. I stayed silent, waiting. Taking care of people doesn't mean sacrificing yourself, he continued. I ran because I didn't know how to handle the pressure. You faced it head on. And when you had enough, you walked away the right way. You didn't run. You just chose yourself. A lump formed in my throat, but I swallowed it down. That doesn't change anything. He sighed again. I know. I don't expect it to. I wanted to say it. I sat there, gripping the phone, heart pounding. After all these years, he finally reached out. For this, I don't know what you want me to say, I muttered. You don't have to say anything, he replied. Just, take care of yourself, okay? And then, just like that, he hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone. Processing. He was right. I had chosen myself. And for the first time in my life, I was finally okay with that. A few weeks passed, and I kept thinking about that call. Not because I cared about my father's words, but because I didn't for so long. I had lived for other people. My mom. My siblings. Even the ghost of my absent father. I had twisted myself into someone who gave and gave, hoping one day I'd be seen. Appreciated. Loved. But now? Now, I didn't need their validation. I didn't need their approval. I had my own then. One evening, I got a text from my mom. Family dinner at my place this Sunday. No pressure, but I'd love to see you. No guilt. No expectation. Just an invitation. I stared at the message for a moment. A year ago, a message like this would have made me anxious. I would have braced for the inevitable requests, the veiled manipulation. But this time? I smiled. When Sunday came, I showed up, not out of obligation, but because I wanted to. Mom had cooked again, and this time, Lisa and Mark were already there, setting the table like normal adults instead of waiting to be catered to. It felt different. Not forced. Not tense. Just real. During dinner, Lisa nudged me. So, what have you been up to? You've been quiet lately. I shrugged. Just living. Traveling a bit. Working on my own projects. Mark smirked. Not funding anyone's lifestyle? I raised an eyebrow. Nope. He chuckled, shaking his head. Good. You shouldn't. I blinked. That was the first time he had ever said something like that. Mom cleared her throat, looking at me. I know we're not perfect. But I hope you know that even when I got lost in all of it, I always loved you. And I'll never take you for granted again. I met her eyes. For the first time, I believed her. I know, Mom. Dinner continued. We laughed. We talked. And for once, it wasn't about money, it wasn't about what I could do for them. It was just family, and for the first time in my life, it felt like that was enough. Months passed, and for the first time in my life, I felt whole, no burdens. No expectations. Just my own life, my own choices. I traveled. I invested in my passions. I started saying yes to things that scared me, to experiences I had put on hold for years because I had been too busy carrying everyone else. And my family? They adjusted. Lisa's boutique wasn't booming, but she had figured out how to manage it without my help. Mark had finally gotten his act together. He wasn't rich, but he was stable. My mom? She had fully embraced her independence. One day, she called me, excitement in her voice. I bought my first car, she said. I almost dropped my phone. Wait, what? She laughed. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine. I paid for it. I even haggled the price down. You would have been proud. I was. Not because she bought a car, but because she was standing on her own. One afternoon, I was sitting at a cafe, drinking coffee and watching the world move around me, when I realized something. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for the next disaster, I wasn't dreading a phone call, a request, an expectation. I was just living. And it hit me all at once. Asterisk asterisk, this is what life was supposed to feel like. Asterisk asterisk, not heavy. Not exhausting. Just free. I smiled to myself, took another sip of my coffee, and let the world keep moving. Because for the first time, I was moving with it. A year had passed since I walked away from being my family's provider, and life had taken on a rhythm that was entirely my own. No unexpected calls. No last-minute emergencies that somehow always landed on my plate. Just peace. One evening, I was packing for a trip when my phone rang. It was Lisa. I hesitated before answering, old instincts creeping in. But I shook them off. She wasn't calling for money anymore. Things were different now. Hey, I answered. Hey, she said, her voice unusually soft. So. I just wanted to say thank you. I paused mid-fold. For what? For everything, she said. And not just the money. For stepping back. For making us figure things out. It sucked at first, but I get it now. You weren't punishing us. You were saving yourself. I sat down on my bed, taking that in. She sighed. I spent so much time being mad at you, thinking you abandoned us. But the truth is, you were the only one holding everything together. And when you let go, we had to grow up. I had to grow up. A lump formed in my throat. I should have said it sooner, she continued, but I'm proud of you. I exhaled, shaking my head with a small smile. Thanks, Lisa. That means a lot. Yeah, well, she said, trying to play it off, don't get used to it. We both laughed. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at my packed suitcase. I had spent so much of my life trying to hold on to my family, trying to be what they needed. But in the end, stepping back didn't break us. It saved us. And as I zipped up my bag and grabbed my passport, I realized something. I wasn't just moving forward. I was finally free to chase my own future. A few more months passed, and life felt like mine for the first time ever. I had traveled to places I'd only seen in pictures. I met new people, built connections that weren't based on obligation or guilt. I poured time into my career, my hobbies, and most importantly, myself. And my family? They were thriving in their own ways. Lisa expanded her boutique, not because I funded it, but because she figured it out herself. Mark, who once relied on my handouts, was now saving for his own place. My mom? She wasn't just surviving, she was living. Then one evening, I got a call from her. Hey, sweetheart, she said, her voice lighter than I'd ever heard it. I have some news. I smiled. Good news or bad news? She chuckled. Good. I got promoted. My jaw dropped. Wait, what? Yeah, she said, sounding almost shy. The boutique owner saw how hard I was working and offered me a managerial position. More pay, more responsibility, but I actually like it. I leaned back, shaking my head in disbelief. Mom, that's amazing. She hesitated. I wouldn't have gotten here if you hadn't stepped back. I needed that push even if I hated it at the time. For a long time, she had resented my decision to walk away, to stop playing the role of caretaker. But now? She understood. I'm proud of you, I told her. She sniffled. I'm proud of me too. And that was the biggest change of all. She had found her own strength. We talked for a while, but when we hung up, I sat in silence, thinking about how far we'd come. I had spent years believing that if I didn't take care of my family, they would fall apart. That they needed me. But the truth? They just needed a reason to stand on their own. And I needed to let go to truly live. As I sat there, looking out at the city skyline, I realized something. I wasn't just free from my family's expectations. I was free to build a future that belonged only to me. Months turned into another year, and the life I once feared I'd lose, the one where my family needed me, felt like a distant memory. Not because I lost them, but because we all found something better. One day, I got a text from Mark. Lunch? My treat, ***, I nearly laughed. Mark, the same brother who used to ask me for money every other month, was now offering to pay for me. Curious, I agreed. When we met up at a restaurant downtown, he looked different. More put together. Confident. He wasn't drowning in financial stress or expecting me to fix something for him. Over our meal, he told me about a new job opportunity he was excited about, how he was looking into buying a condo soon. Damn, I said, smirking. Who are you, and what did you do with my brother? He laughed. I had to grow up, didn't I? I nodded, sipping my drink. Yeah. We all did. Then, he leaned forward slightly, his tone more serious. I never told you this, but, for a long time, I resented you. I thought you had it easy because you were successful. Because you could help us. I stayed quiet, letting him speak. But when you walked away, I realized how much you had been carrying. And man, I don't know how you did it. I could barely handle my own life, let alone everyone else's. I raised an eyebrow. Are you apologizing? He rolled his eyes. Don't make it weird. I chuckled. Too late. But in that moment, I knew he meant it. And that was enough. Later that night, I sat alone on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker below me. For the first time in years, I wasn't someone's savior. I wasn't their crutch, their fallback plan, their safety net. I was just me, and for the first time ever, that felt like enough. A few months later, I got an invitation that caught me completely off guard. It was from my mom. She was hosting a small dinner at her house, the one she now paid for herself, not a holiday, not a birthday, just a simple gathering. A normal family dinner, the kind we never used to have without some underlying financial crisis. I hesitated before accepting. Not because I didn't want to go, but because for so long, family gatherings had meant stress, guilt, and the unspoken expectation that I would fix everything. But this time? It felt different. When I arrived, Lisa and Mark were already there, helping set the table. My mom greeted me with a hug, not out of desperation, not because she needed anything, but just because she wanted to. Dinner was easy, no tension. No passive-aggressive remarks. Just conversation about work, travel, funny stories from the past. At some point, my mom turned to me and said, "I never told you this, but, thank you." I raised an eyebrow. For what? For saving me, she said. Not by giving me everything, but by making me learn how to stand on my own. Lisa nodded. Same here. I used to think you abandoned us. But now? I get it. You weren't leaving us behind. You were showing us that we could do it ourselves. Mark smirked. Still took you long enough. I chuckled, shaking my head. Yeah. You're welcome. And just like that, the weight I had carried for years, the guilt, the resentment, the fear of losing them, was gone, I hadn't lost my family. I had finally gotten them back, and this time, I wasn't their provider. I wasn't their fixer. I was just their brother. Their son, and for the first time ever, that was all I needed to be. As I drove home that night, a strange feeling settled in my chest, contentment, for years. I had convinced myself that stepping away from my family would mean losing them. That if I stopped being their provider, they would resent me forever. But I had been wrong. By walking away from the role they had placed me in, I had given them the chance to step into their own. I had forced them to grow, to stand on their own feet, to take responsibility for their own lives. And in doing so, I had given myself back to me, no more being the safety net. No more sacrificing my own happiness just to keep the peace. No more guilt. Just living. As I pulled into my driveway, I sat for a moment, staring out at the quiet night. I had spent so much of my life making sure everyone else was okay. But now? Now, I was finally okay, too. And that? That was enough.